I married my wealthy boss, only to discover he secretly transferred $500, $0 to his mistress, the same woman I found at our house, claiming it was all a misunderstanding. But now he's suing me for breach of contract over our estate worth over $1 million. I never thought I'd be the kind of guy to get like this. You think you know someone, especially the person you marry, and then one day, everything just crashes down around you. The craziest part. It all started with a simple suspicion that turned into a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I married about 3 years ago. She was beautiful, smart, and ambitious, everything I thought I wanted in a wife. I was a successful businessman, running a company that kept me busy most days, but I always made time for her. We lived in a big house in the suburbs, had the kind of life most people dream about. Or so I thought. From the start was a little bitchy. She had this way of dismissing my concerns, throwing fits if I didn't give her enough attention, and lying like it was second nature. I always knew she loved money. But I didn't realize how deep that obsession ran until I started noticing little things. Small discrepancies in her stories, her sudden interest in designer clothes I never bought her, and her spending habits that seemed to escalate out of nowhere. The first real sign that something was wrong was when I caught her sneaking her phone around me more often. I'd ask her about her day, and she'd brush it off, saying she was busy or tired. But I could see her eyes darting away, hiding something. At first, I thought maybe she was just being paranoid. Then I noticed she was acting weird around the house. She'd leave her phone in the bedroom, then come out looking guilty whenever I walked in. One night, I decided to check her phone while she was in the shower. I know, invasion of privacy, but I was desperate. I found messages, flirty texts with some guy named Jake. Nothing explicit, but enough to set off alarm bells. I also saw a few pictures of her in a hotel room with a caption that said, "Can't wait to see you tonight." My stomach sank. I didn't want to believe it, but the signs were piling up. That was just the beginning. Over the next few weeks, I noticed her spending more time out with friends, always working late, and her stories about her day didn't add up. She'd come home late, smelling of perfume I didn't recognize, and her mood swings were worse than ever. One night, I decided to follow her when she left the house unexpectedly. That's when I saw her at a fancy hotel, sneaking into a room with a guy I didn't know. I stood there watching her kiss him goodbye through the window. My heart felt like it was being squeezed in a vice. I was furious, betrayed, and confused all at once. How could the woman I loved do this to me? I thought we had everything: money, stability, trust. But she was just playing me, using me for my wealth while she cheated behind my back. I didn't confront her right away. Instead, I needed to think. How could I have missed all the signs? How could she lie so effortlessly? I started digging, looking into her bank accounts and emails. That's when I found the biggest shock of all. She had secretly transferred $500, $0 from our joint account to her lover. $500,000, just like that, gone. I couldn't believe my eyes. She'd been siphoning money from our estate, which was worth over $1 million, right under my nose. I started to piece everything together. The expensive trips, the fake smiles, her constant lies, all part of a bigger plan to drain us dry and run off with her guy. I felt sick, angry, and helpless all at once. But I wasn't going to let her get away with it. Not without a fight. I needed to come up with a plan. I knew she'd deny everything if I confronted her directly, so I started gathering evidence, screenshots of the transfers, recordings of her conversations, everything I could find. I wanted to catch her in the act, expose her for who she really was. The worst part: she kept lying, insisting she was innocent, claiming I was paranoid or jealous. She spun stories about how I was controlling, how she only wanted to work on her career, and that I was just imagining things. But I knew the truth. I'd seen her secret messages, her sneaky trips. She was cheating, stealing, and lying, all for some guy she met at a bar. Now I was stuck in this mess, feeling like a fool for trusting her. I had to decide what to do next, whether to fight for my marriage or cut my losses. The betrayal ran so deep I didn't know if I'd ever be able to look at her the same way again. But one thing was clear: I was going to get my revenge. She'd taken enough from me, and I wasn't going down without a fight. After I uncovered the full extent of her betrayal, I couldn't sleep. My mind kept racing, looping over the images of her with that guy, the secret transfers, the lies. I was furious, but underneath that anger was a deep, aching sense of betrayal that cut way deeper than I expected. How could she do this to me? To us? I was the one who built everything we had, my success, my money, and she was just siphoning it off like it was nothing. I decided I couldn't just confront her without a plan. That night I stayed up late, going through every email, every bank statement, every piece of evidence I'd gathered. I knew I had to be smart about this. If I was going to catch her in a lie, I needed to be meticulous. I set up a hidden camera in the bedroom just in case she tried to hide anything else. I also called my lawyer friend, Mark, who knew about estate law, and asked him for advice. The next morning I sat her down in the living room. She looked at me with that fake innocent face, eyes wide, lips pursed, like she didn't have a care in the world. I was calm, but inside I was boiling. I laid out all my evidence, the texts, the money transfers, the hotel receipts. She blinked, then started to spin her usual lies. "It's all a misunderstanding," she said. "You're overreacting. I was just talking to Jake about work. You're paranoid." I didn't buy it. I knew her too well. She was a master manipulator, and I'd seen her lie her way out of worse situations. I told her I knew about the money, about her affair, about everything. Her face twisted and she started crying, fake tears, I could tell. She begged, pleaded, accused me of being jealous and controlling. "You don't understand," she said. "Jake is just a friend. You're just insecure. You're accusing me of stuff I didn't do." But I wasn't buying her bullshit anymore. I told her I was done playing her game. I was going to take her to court over the money. She'd stolen $500,000 and I wasn't going to let her get away with it. She looked angry, then suddenly calm. "You're just jealous because I found someone better," she spat. "This isn't about money. It's about us, and you're just too blind to see it." That's when I realized she was trying to turn the tables, make me the bad guy. But I knew better. I'd seen enough. I told her she was done, that I was filing for divorce, and that I'd be taking back everything she'd taken from me. I also made sure to warn her that I had all the evidence I needed to expose her, and that I'd fight her in court if she dared to try and weasel her way out. The next few days were a blur. I hired a private investigator to follow her, just to confirm her whereabouts and see if she was still sneaking around with Jake. Turns out she was. She was meeting him at a downtown hotel, sneaking out late at night, acting like she was single. That was the final nail in the coffin. I had everything I needed. Meanwhile, I started talking to my lawyer about the legal steps. I wanted to freeze her accounts, get a court order to stop her from transferring any more money, and prepare for a divorce that would also seek compensation for the stolen funds. I was not going to let her walk away with my estate, my money, or my peace of mind. I felt the weight of everything I'd built starting to slip away, but I wasn't going down without a fight. Honestly, I felt like I was in some twisted soap opera. The betrayal, the lies, the sudden events, everything was happening so fast. I kept questioning myself, wondering if I missed the signs, if I was naive for trusting her. But deep down, I knew this was about more than just betrayal. It was about justice. About reclaiming what she tried to steal from me. I decided I'd go to war over this, and I'd make her pay for every penny she took and every lie she told. As I prepared for the legal battle ahead, I couldn't help but feel a strange mix of relief and dread. Relief because I finally knew the truth, and dread because I knew this was just the beginning of a long, painful fight. But I also knew one thing for sure, was not going to get away with this. Not without consequences. And I was determined to see her pay. The days that followed felt like walking through a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. Every time I looked at the house, I saw her, moving around, pretending everything was normal, but I knew better. I'd uncovered enough to know that she was actively lying, cheating, and planning her escape with Jake. I couldn't let her get away with it, not without a fight. I spent most of my time with my lawyer, Mark. We drafted the legal documents, froze her bank accounts, and initiated the process of filing for divorce. I also instructed him to dig deeper into her finances. I wanted to see if she'd transferred any more money or if she'd been trying to hide assets. The last thing I wanted was for her to walk away with a clean slate, leaving me footing the bill for her betrayal. Meanwhile, I kept tabs on her. I hired a private investigator, as I mentioned, and he confirmed what I feared, was still sneaking out to meet Jake. I saw her leaving the hotel late at night, looking nervous, clutching her purse tightly. That was the moment I knew I had to confront her again, face to face, and get her to admit everything. One afternoon, I called her into the living room. She was dressed up, probably trying to look innocent. I didn't bother hiding my anger. I told her I knew about her affair, about the money transfers, and about her plans to run. Her face paled for a second, then she tried to brush it off. "You're overreacting," she said. "This is all just a misunderstanding. I love you and I don't know what you're talking about." She looked so fake, so rehearsed. I could see right through her. I told her I wasn't interested in her lies anymore. That I had proof, screenshots, bank statements, witness reports, and that I was going to take her to court. I told her I was done with her games and that she better start taking responsibility for her actions. She started crying again, but this time it was different. It was genuine anger mixed with desperation. She yelled at me, calling me jealous, controlling, and insecure. Said I was paranoid and that I was ruining everything. That was the moment I realized she was trying to manipulate me into backing down, but I wasn't going to fall for it. I told her she had two choices: come clean or face the consequences. I warned her that I'd be fighting for my estate and that I'd sue her for everything she'd stolen. I also made it clear that I was going to expose her affair to everyone, including her family. I wanted her to understand that I wasn't just angry, I was determined. She stormed out after that, but I knew she wouldn't stop. She was too prideful, too desperate. I kept pushing forward with the legal process, knowing that she'd try to stall or lie her way out of it. But I had enough evidence to bury her. I had recordings, bank statements, her hotel receipts, and the private investigator's reports. I was ready for the fight of my life. In the meantime, I also started planning my next move. I knew she'd try to hide more money, so I hired a forensic accountant to trace her financial activities. I wanted to make sure she didn't transfer anything else, and I wanted to prepare for a lengthy court battle. I also reached out to a divorce attorney, knowing I'd need to protect my assets and get custody of my assets that I'd built over years of hard work. Honestly, I felt like I was losing myself in all of this. The betrayal, the lies, the sudden events, it was a lot to handle. But at the same time, I felt a strange sense of clarity. I realized I'd been blind for too long, trusting someone who only cared about herself and her greed. I'd been naive, but I was learning fast. And I was determined not to let her walk away with everything I'd worked so hard for. The worst part, I still loved her, or at least I did once. That love was quickly turning into disgust. I kept asking myself how someone could be so selfish, so willing to destroy everything. We had for a quick fling and a pile of money. I don't think I'll ever forget the betrayal, but I also knew I had to move on, stronger, smarter, and more cautious than ever. I wasn't just fighting for my money, I was fighting for my dignity. And I'd do whatever it took to make her pay for what she did. The legal process moved faster than I expected, probably because I had all the evidence I needed. Once I filed the paperwork's attitude shifted. She started panicking, which was a small victory in itself. She tried to spin even more lies, claiming I was just trying to ruin her, that she loved me and it was all a big misunderstanding. But I knew better. I'd seen her with Jake, I'd seen her transfer the money, and I had the receipts. There was no way she could talk her way out of this one. Her reaction to the court papers was almost comical. She burst into tears, claiming she was innocent, that I was just jealous and controlling. She called her friends, begged them to talk to me, tried to turn everyone against me. But I stayed calm. I knew. She tried to manipulate the situation, but I also knew I had the upper hand. I wasn't just fighting for money. I was fighting for my reputation, my dignity, and my future. Meanwhile, I kept digging. My forensic accountant uncovered more irregularities, had been funneling money into secret accounts in her sister's name, trying to hide assets. She'd been planning her escape for months, probably even before I caught her at the hotel. I couldn't believe I'd been so blind. She'd played me like a fiddle. All those years, all that trust, wasted on someone who was just after my money. The court hearing started and the judge quickly saw through her lies. I presented all my evidence: bank statements, recordings, witness statements from the private investigator. His lawyer tried to argue she was innocent, claiming she was just a victim of circumstances, but the judge wasn't buying it. I could see the frustration on her face as she realized her lies weren't working anymore. In the courtroom, I felt a strange mix of relief and anger. Relief because I finally had proof, and anger because I'd been so stupid to trust her in the first place. Watching her squirm under oath was satisfying. She couldn't deny the facts anymore. The judge ordered her to return the stolen $500, $0 plus interest, and to pay damages for the breach of trust and fraud. That money was a huge part of my estate, and I was determined to get every penny back. But the biggest blow was yet to come. The court also granted me full custody of most of our shared assets and ordered her to stay away from the house and me. I felt a strange sense of closure. I'd fought hard and I'd won, at least legally. She was ordered to pay me financially, and I was finally free from her manipulations. Still, I knew this wasn't the end. The emotional scars would take longer to heal than the money. After the hearing, she disappeared for a few days. Rumor has it she was crying to her friends, trying to find ways to avoid the court order. But I didn't care. I was exhausted but relieved. I had finally taken control of my life again. I'd learned a lot about trust, betrayal, and the importance of watching your back. I'd been yes, but I'd also fought back harder than I ever thought I could. In the aftermath, I started focusing on rebuilding myself. I sold the house, something I never thought I'd do, and moved into a smaller place. I cut ties with her completely. I also hired a financial advisor to help me secure my assets and plan for the future. I realized I'd been so caught up in her lies that I'd forgotten to look out for myself. Now I was determined to do just that. Looking back, I know I made mistakes. I trusted the wrong person and I let my guard down. But I also learned that sometimes you have to fight for what's yours. That betrayal doesn't just hurt, it changes you. And though I'm still healing, I'm stronger now. I've learned to be more cautious, more aware of the subtle signs of deceit. And I want others to know trust is good, but trust must be earned, and if someone shows you who they really are, believe them. Now I focus on my business, on my family, and on making sure I never get like that again. It's gone, but her betrayal left scars. Still, I refuse to let it define me. I'll move forward, smarter and more guarded, knowing I fought for everything I have now. And I hope anyone out there who's been betrayed learns to stand up for themselves, no matter how hard it gets. Because in the end, nobody's coming to save you. Sometimes, you have to do it yourself. The months that followed felt like a roller coaster I couldn't get off. After winning the court case and getting back the stolen $500,000, I thought I'd finally breathe easy. But the emotional toll was heavier than I expected. Seeing her face in court, hearing her deny everything, and knowing the damage she'd caused left scars I knew wouldn't heal overnight. Still, I was determined to move on. I started focusing on myself, rebuilding what was broken, and trying to forget the betrayal that had shattered my trust. One thing I learned was how much I'd underestimated her. Had always been good at hiding her true nature. She'd lie so smoothly, I almost believed her. But now I saw her for what she was, a manipulative, selfish woman who'd do anything for money and excitement. I realized I'd been too blind, too trusting. The worst part, she was still trying to manipulate the situation from the sidelines. I caught her trying to reach out to some of my friends, trying to spin her story, make herself look innocent. But I'd learned my lesson. No more trust without proof. I also started to reflect on what I wanted from life. The house was gone, the woman I loved was gone, and I was left standing there, questioning everything. I knew I'd have to rebuild my reputation, my finances, and most importantly, my sense of self. I hired a therapist, not because I was crazy, but because I needed to process the betrayal and rebuild my confidence. It helped a little, but deep down, I knew I'd carry this pain for a long time. One bright spot was reconnecting with my friends and family. They'd been supportive throughout the nightmare, and I leaned on them more than ever. They reminded me of who I was before, focused, ambitious, and resilient. Slowly, I started dating again, cautiously at first. I didn't want to jump into anything serious too soon, but I knew I needed to remind myself what happiness felt like. Trusting someone again was a risk, but I refused to let her betrayal define my entire life. Meanwhile, I kept a close eye on my finances. I'd learned the hard way that money could disappear so easily if you weren't careful. My investments, set up better protections, and made sure my estate was secure. I also started donating some of the recovered money to charity, which gave me a sense of purpose beyond the pain. It felt good to do something positive out of all this chaos. As I moved forward, I kept thinking about what I'd do differently if I ever found myself in a similar situation again. Trust, I realized, isn't something you give freely. It's something you earn. And people's true colors tend to come out when money and opportunity are involved. I'd also learned the importance of being vigilant, of asking tough questions, and of listening to that little voice inside that warns you when something's off. Most importantly, I learned that betrayal cuts deep, but it doesn't have to break you. It's a test of resilience. I'd survived even if I was battered and bruised. I was angry, yes, but I was also determined. I refused to let her destroy what I'd built. I was going to come out of this stronger, wiser, and more cautious. Now I focus on my future. I've started a new business, one that's more secure and transparent. I've set clearer boundaries with people, and I'm more careful about who I trust. Is a distant memory now, just a chapter in my story. But I carry the lessons she taught me, lessons about greed, deception, and strength. If anyone out there is going through something similar, my advice is simple. Don't ignore the signs, trust yourself, and fight for what's right. Because in the end, nobody else will do it for you. You have to be your own hero. Looking back now, I realize how much I've changed through all of this. I used to believe that trust was the foundation of everything: marriage, friendship, business. But I've learned that trust must be earned, and even then, you have to stay vigilant. So betrayal tore my world apart, but it also forced me to what really matters. I found out that strength isn't just about fighting back. It's about knowing when to walk away, how to protect yourself, and recognizing the value of your own integrity. One thing I'm proud of is how I refused to let her steal my peace of mind completely. I could have crumbled, fallen into despair, or let her control my emotions forever. Instead, I chose to fight, to rebuild, and to learn from the pain. The money she stole, the lies she told, those are just parts of the story. The real victory was reclaiming my life, my dignity, and my sense of self-worth. I want anyone reading this who might be going through something similar to understand that betrayal can be devastating, but it's also an opportunity to grow stronger, wiser, and more cautious. I've come to accept that sometimes the only way forward is to confront the truth head-on, no matter how painful it is, because hiding from it only prolongs the suffering. Facing it, owning it, and then taking action, that's what gets you through. Now I focus on the future. I spend my days doing things I love, building my new business, traveling, reconnecting with friends and family. I've learned to forgive myself for being naive, but I also know that I'll never let anyone take advantage of me again. Trust is earned, not given freely, and I'm more careful about whom I let into my life. I protect myself, my assets, and my peace of mind more than ever. The biggest lesson: don't wait for someone else to save you or fix your life. Sometimes the most important thing you can do is stand up, fight back, and take control. Thought she could destroy me, but she only made me stronger. Her lies, her greed, her betrayal, they all backfired. I got my revenge, not just financially, but emotionally and mentally. I proved to myself that I can survive the worst and come out the other side more resilient. So here I am, still standing, still fighting, and still learning. I know I'll carry the scars of her betrayal for a long time, but I also know I'm better for it. I've learned what true strength looks like, and I refuse to let anyone take that away from me again. Life isn't about avoiding pain, it's about overcoming it. And I've done just that. To anyone reading this, if you're going through something similar, remember, you're not alone. Trust is fragile, but your spirit is. Fight for yourself, face the truth, and never settle for less than you deserve. Because in the end, the real victory is reclaiming your life and knowing you're stronger than any betrayal.